In last week's video, I shared with you a season of life that I'm going through that I have been feeling very unsettled in life. I feel like there's maybe a transition, maybe a change that needs to take place, but I don't know what that is. So it's been difficult for me to know the steps I need to take. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that. If you missed that video, you can check it out up here or check it out down in the description. But one of the things that I discovered while I was reflecting on this season of life that I'm in is I have this feeling of the need to expand. Now, when I was driving to the studio today, I did not know what I would be speaking on for this video, and I was trying to come up with and prepare a video, and I kept thinking about the idea of expanding. And today I want to talk to you about expanding your life as it pertains to personal growth and development. So let's talk about it. Now, this is going to be one of those videos that I did not prepare for like I normally like to. It's one of those off the cuff type of videos, but just driving to the studio today, I had what I would call an epiphany, a revelation, whatever you want to call it, about the subject of expanding in personal development that I want to share with you. Now, I have shared with you in the past that I believe when you see a concept or a truth or a principle played out in many different areas of life, it usually means that it's connected to a universal or a spiritual truth. As a believer, I believe that there are biblical truths, spiritual truths from God's word that will work in all different areas of life. And even if you're not a Christian, these certain spiritual truths or laws will work for you. Now, when I was thinking about the subject of expanding and this feeling that I had that I need to grow or expand somewhere, while I was driving to the studio, all of a sudden I had this picture of a potted plant. And just in my mind, there was this image of this potted plant. And these words came up in my thoughts, you need to expand. And in that little vision or whatever you'd want to call it, I understood the concept that if you put a plant in a pot, it will only grow so much. But if you keep it in that container at some point, its growth will quit expanding because of the environment it's in. And this is a truth that we know, personal development people know. And then based on that initial thought, I also thought about how there are certain types of fish that if you put them in an aquarium, they will only grow to a certain size and they will quit growing because of the environment they're in. And if you want them to continue to grow, you have to change their environment or you have to expand their environment. And because you see it over in with plants, you see it with animals. I could list off a number of other places that have this same idea of stunting someone's growth based on their environment, whether that's psychological, whether that's emotional, whatever it is. I begin to see this truth in light of personal development or personal growth. And I believe this is one of the things that I've been feeling that I just never really recognized, never really thought of. But as you go through the journey of personal development, the quest to live the more intentional life, you are growing and expanding on the inside. You're growing in capabilities, you're growing in your understanding, you're growing in knowledge. But if you don't change your environment, you could run the danger of stunting your personal growth. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I've heard a number of different personal development people talk about how, as you're on your personal development journey, sometimes you might need to change the friends you hang out with. Now, I'm not one of those people that think you need to forsake your friends as you grow and as you develop in personal growth and development just because they're not along with you for the ride. You know, they might need you. You might have outgrown your need for them, but we're not selfish people. You can help them along. But if your current group of friends doesn't want to go along with you and is hindering you, you might need to hang out with them less. You might need to change your environment or grow. But you can find it in other ways too. One of the things that I was thinking about is often when someone's doing personal development, personal growth, they will start to feel dissatisfied with certain things that previously they were not discontent with. And that's because what's happening on the inside of them, they're growing and expanding, but their environment has not yet changed. And so now there's a tension between what's inside, your expansion on the inside, and your environment on the outside. And I don't know why, but I've been on this personal development journey for more than 2 years now. And I can look back and I can see there were times that I needed to change the way I was doing certain things as I grew and as I learned and as I developed. Changing habits is a way of expanding your environment, changing your environment to continue to allow you to grow. But I guess I just never really thought about it in the fact that other things need to be changed. More stuff in your environment might need to be expanded if you're going to continue to grow, or you run the risk of stunting your personal growth. What that might mean for your life is as you grow and develop, you may have been fully content in your job, but as you grow and as you develop, all of a sudden you feel like you're discontented in that job. It might not mean that job is bad. It might not mean the job has changed at all. It just means that you've changed. And in order to continue to grow and develop in your career, you need to expand in that job. And if you don't, you run the risk of stunting your growth in that arena of life of personal development. What that could mean is it could mean, yeah, go ahead and change a job, but it also could just mean going to your boss and saying, hey, I believe I'm ready to take on more responsibility. I believe I'm ready to move up the chain. Is there any opportunities for me? I want to prove to you that I can do more for this company. But as I was just driving to the studio and I was just thinking about this, I just really, it really became clear to me that as you work in personal development, as you work in growth, you need to have expansion in your outlet for those things if you don't want to stunt your growth. Now, like I said, that outlet could be in a different position, more responsibilities, but it could also just be in a different area of life. I had never recognized it before, never really thought about it before, but this YouTube channel was an expansion in my life that has allowed me to continue to grow and continue to develop. Had I not had this outlet for that growth, I could have maybe stunted my growth and not even been aware of it, not even known about it. Maybe in your personal growth and development, you need to expand what you're doing in your finances. Maybe you need to expand in your investments or expand into maybe real estate or whatever. But when you're growing, you're changing your capabilities, you're changing your understanding on the inside. But if you're not careful to rearrange and with intention change your outside to allow that growth to continue you'll be in danger of stunting your growth. Now, like I said, I did not prepare an entire message on this. Maybe I'll meditate on it more, think about it more, and maybe later on I'll come back with a fully developed message. But I just felt it was important to share with you today that if you're in your personal development journey, if you're trying to grow and trying to develop, understand it will happen first on the inside. You'll expand your capabilities, expand your growth, but be intentional about your environment and make sure that you are adjusting your environment and you're expanding your environment to accommodate continued growth and personal development. Because if you don't, you might end up hitting a roadblock or hitting a plateau and not really understanding why you did. And what it was is because you didn't take that growth and move it into another pot or into a bigger pot. And just the idea of that really did help me in certain ways. In that video last week, I shared with you, I felt this need to expand, but I didn't even really know what that meant. But just driving to work today, I understood. You know what? After 2 years of personal development and personal growth, I have changed my capabilities. I have changed on the inside in my knowledge, my understanding, what I can accomplish, my capacity, my efficiencies, all of those things. And yet I actually have not changed too much of my environment. Other than this YouTube channel, which has been an outlet for it, I really haven't expanded in other areas of my life. And I don't know if it's the full answer of this feeling that I've had for the past 2 weeks that I discussed in that video, but I do believe it's part of the answer. I do believe now the thing I'm looking for is, okay, what do I need to expand in my environment to facilitate my continued growth? Really, it's literally like I have outgrown my current environment. And so the capacity that I've been developing over these couple years of personal development is now pushing against my environment and it's running up against a block. But if I will take the things I've learned about living the more intentional life, I can examine my life and I can say, okay, I need to expand here. Now, that expansion can sometimes be a little bit scary, but it's not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean you're changing your life. It doesn't mean that you are actually dissatisfied with life. One of the ideas that came into my mind while I was driving to the studio today, after I was thinking about this, is we have a nice living room. I'm happy with our living room. I'm content with in our living room. But that doesn't mean that if I'm sitting on my couch and I'm watching my TV, that I couldn't look over and be like, you know what? I wonder what my living room would look like if I knocked that wall down and built out and expanded a little bit. Doesn't mean I'm going to a different living room. I'm just wanting to expand. And so there's nothing wrong with this desire to expand. And in fact, there is a need to expand. If you're going to do personal development, if you're going to live the more intentional life, growth requires change, but it also requires expansion. As you grow physically, the clothes that I used to wear when I was 4 or 5 years old, I needed to change those because the growth that was on the inside of those clothes was not matching the growth that was on the outside of the clothes. So expansion and growth go together hand in hand. And I guess I just never really thought about it that way before. But I do believe it was an answer to one of the things that I've been meditating on this current season I'm in of transition and change. It might just be I'm bumping up against my environment. I've grown enough to where something on the outside needs to grow so that I can continue to grow. I don't know if that helped you, but today driving to the studio, man, that sure helped me. It just kind of gave me a piece that, there is a process to everything. There is a process to growth, and part of that process is expansion. Maybe you've been feeling that unsettled feeling. Maybe you've been feeling, tightness. Maybe you've been feeling boxed in. It doesn't mean you're in prison. It doesn't mean you're trapped. It just means you need to expand and grow out so that you can continue your journey of personal development. If you want to learn more about living this more intentional life, about the growth and personal development, you can check out this playlist here. But until I see you again, go out and live that more intentional life.